and in. So when you first open Photoshop, you're going to see something about like this. With your recent Photoshop images there and an option as to what you want to be doing. Usually you're going to be doing one of a couple things. You may be opening an existing image, or you're going to be creating something from new. So when we hit new, what we get is a bunch of presets that Photoshop has for us, as well as some recent sizes. Now Photoshop is a raster-based image editing program. That means it's pixel-based. It's very, very important to know what your largest intended output is and to make sure that you design at that size as opposed to just accepting whatever pops up. What I see so often is, especially when students are opening, for instance, another image, they don't pay attention to the resolution, and then they work on it for a while, and then they get ready to print it and find out that they don't have enough pixel information to make a quality image. So very first thing that I recommend doing, instead of opening an existing photograph or image, is to start off with a brand new image, and to make sure that you have the proper pixel dimensions, proper size for the image. Over here on the right, we have some preset details. We can also go and customize exactly what it is we want to be doing. For our demonstration purposes, I'm going to go ahead and be working on a fairly standard size, 1024 by 768. I'm simply doing that so that my work window will show what all I'm working on. That would be fine for a large web image, but it would certainly be too small for print. And I'm not going to be using artboards today. So here are my dimensions. I can measure it in pixels or inches. If we're planning on printing, we're going to be working in inches. If we're planning on using this on either in video or online, we're going to be measuring our resolution in pixels. Screen resolution for the web is 72 pixels per inch. For video, it's 96 pixels per inch, and for print, we're going to say 300 pixels per inch, but we'll cover that in more detail. Now, Photoshop, at its heart, when the program was first invented, and so therefore the mathematics and the logarithms that go into it, was designed to handle 8-bit RGB color images. We can set Photoshop up to work in other color modes. However, as we leave the 8-bit RGB mode, we will lose certain features in Photoshop. Even if I'm planning on going to press and needing a CMYK image, I prefer to work in RGB and convert to CMYK color at the very end of my process. Some people say, oh, go ahead and start off in CMYK. I like all the features in Photoshop, and I hate when they aren't all available to me. And since we only convert color spaces, color modes one time, I would prefer to go from RGB to CMYK than work without some of my tools. So I usually work in RGB color. Our monitors only show 16 bits of, or 8 bits of color at a time. And again, Photoshop works best in 8 bits per color. Unless you know why you're working in 16 or 32-bit mode, work in 8 bits per color. Our color profile determines how the different values for each color are distributed. Some produce more colors and some produce fewer colors. So something like Adobe RGB or ProPhoto RGB is actually going to give us more colors than our standard RGB. However, if you're going onto the web and also with a lot of print services, they're going to default to the one of the smallest of the color spaces, which is sRGB. And so you may find that you want to be working in the sRGB color mode profile, just so that you're getting a pretty good representation of what you're working with. With that done, we're going to go ahead and create. One thing I should share with you, if I grab an image off the internet, no, let's just copy this image. It's not going to let me just copy that image. Okay. Command N, images, and I'll grab images. If I grab an image off the web, maybe I'll do it and maybe I won't. Copy image. You notice the resolution there as we're looking at images in Google. When I go to Photoshop and I try to open a new document, by default it's going to be the size of whatever you happen to have on your clipboard at the moment. So keep that in mind. It's good to know. It's useful information, but instead of defaulting to the last size that you used, it will default to whatever happens to be on your clipboard at the moment. Photoshop can be a little bit cumbersome at times. There's so much that can be done with it. Just a quick glance at the screen. We have the toolbar over here on the left. It's currently docked to the left. If I click the little button up there, I can change how it's displayed. I can also grab it and move it so that it's no longer docked on the left side. Most people that I know, if I can get it to go back to where it was now, drag all the way over until the blue line comes up. Prefer it in the ribbon style, docked to the left of their screens. That's where it's going to default to. On the right, we see a whole bunch of what we call palettes open on the right. This particular layout is called the Essentials, Workspace Essentials, which is the default. You may find as you're working that you prefer a different workspace depending on what you're working with. For most of what we're going to do, we're going to start off with the Essentials just so that our windows look fairly similar. You are able to create your own workspaces, and it's encouraged. Photoshop remembers the last thing you did, and so as you start working in Photoshop and you start opening different palettes under the windows, you're going to start ending up with things all over the place. When you shut down and open up the next time, that will happen also. So as you figure out which palettes you prefer for which situations, you're able to go and up here under Window Workspaces, you're able to go ahead and create a new workspace and name it. That's not a bad idea. I do that on a professional basis. I have certain palettes and tools I use for design and others that I use when I'm doing photography work, and it makes the workflow a lot easier and a lot less cluttered. If you see a lot of stuff open over here that you don't use, there's really no reason to keep it open. This is kind of new, the Learn window. I went through some of what's over there. I'd highly recommend that to go through some of those tutorials if this is your first time in Photoshop. I won't say that it necessarily gives you the best way to do certain things, but it certainly introduces you to a lot of concepts in a hurry, and then as you get more comfortable, you can make some decisions about that. I'm also not going to be working with my libraries at the moment. Libraries are great. We can store things that we use over and over again, and then we can just drag them on over when we need them. For instance, a frame that I used for a recent event, I can just drag them on over anytime I want. So that's what the libraries are. I usually do not have my libraries open. It's a personal decision again. And I usually don't have the Learn tab open. So I'm going to just go ahead and shrink those down so they're out of the way. And I'm going to go ahead and close that. By the way, any time that you open a window, by clicking on the name of that palette, you can move it to wherever you want on your screen. You can come down to the bottom and resize it. Maybe. Come on, Greg. Okay. I can spend a lot of time. And if you want to have certain palettes open together, if I drag them in, when that turns blue, now I get tabs for my different palettes. Or if I want them open at the same time, I can dock them together by coming to the bottom, and now those palettes will work around together. And then I can either collapse it and it becomes an icon over here, or I can close the palette altogether if I'm not working on it at the moment. Okay, so that's a brief introduction to the workspace. One other thing I guess I should also show, and I'm just going to create another new window. Now I have two documents open. By default, we see these opened as separate tabs, and we can bounce between them. We can go down over here to the windows and bounce between them. A shortcut for those of you who are on the Mac is to hold the Control and the tilde key, and it will bounce between your open windows. Control tilde, that's that little button beside the 1. And if we go up here to arrange, we can actually show more than one window open at a time, or we can put, tile them, but most of the time I don't want to see more than one thing at a time, so I usually consolidate all mine to tabs and bounce between the different tabs up here. Okay, so that's the workspace. That's one other thing. Okay, sorry about that. As you're working through the toolbar, you will notice that the options for the tool that you are working with appear up top. And when we have the little triangles at the corner, if you click and hold down, you'll notice that there's usually more than one. Well, if there's a triangle, there's always more than one tool there. So when you can't find what you're looking for, that may be where to find it, or we can come down. Anyway, so that's where you're going to find that. Okay? Cool.